The first thing we must understand about U.S. foreign policy is that the rhetoric we hear often has little to do with the policy itself. As the book How to Hide an Empire points out, the priority of U.S. foreign policy is rhetoric. It's crucial to distinguish between the symbols and sounds used to represent reality and reality itself. This is the difference between the words politicians say and the actual actions of the American empire. Politicians, who are often just puppets or piñatas for the real powers, use this rhetoric to deceive the public. They lie to us to dismantle Social Security, destroy medical insurance, and steal our money. They lie to us in the same way they lie to other nations. For example, the U.S. pretended to negotiate with Iran while planning a sneak attack. This is the same tactic they use on their own citizens, lulling us into a false sense of security so they can get away with their criminal activities. When you hear a politician like Donald Trump make grand pronouncements, remember that it's all part of the show. Russia, for instance, isn't fooled by this rhetoric. They understand the game. While Russia was at war with Ukraine, they were also negotiating, which is a normal part of conflict resolution. The U.S., on the other hand, uses negotiations as a cover for their true intentions. This is a fundamental difference in their approaches. These politicians, regardless of their party, use lies to manipulate voters and legitimize their crimes. They are responsible for the deaths of innocent people, for starvation, and for creating systems of control and exploitation. To believe anything they say is to be naive. They are not telling the truth about anything, from foreign policy to domestic issues. Trump's threats to Europe, or his promises to steal Russia's assets, are just more of the same empty rhetoric. The ruling elite in Europe are also part of this scam, enriching themselves at the expense of their people. It's often easier to fool Europeans than Americans because there's a greater tendency to question authority in the U.S. A nation of sheep will always give birth to a government of wolves. Even when a politician seems to be making a bold move, it's usually just another part of the game. The ruling elite are constantly trying to fool the public, and when one scam falls apart, they simply move on to the next. They will continue to fund the war in Ukraine, not for the sake of democracy, but as part of their larger plan for global domination. They can't tell the truth because the public would reject their policies. Russia has no interest in conquering countries like Poland, France, or the Netherlands. These countries are mired in debt and social problems. Russia and China don't have the same immigration issues as former colonial powers because they didn't engage in the same level of exploitation and destabilization. Immigrants are a natural consequence of colonialism, following the resources that were stolen from their home countries. The ruling elite then use immigrants as a scapegoat, blaming them for the problems they themselves created. This is the nature of the American empire, a narcissistic empire where the ruling elite are sociopaths. They are easy to negotiate with because they have no intention of keeping their word. They will lie about everything, from foreign policy to economic recovery bills. They will lie about Iran, China, and Ukraine to achieve their goals. The people of Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan are all just cannon fodder for the empire. They are being used to serve the interests of the U.S., which has no real concern for their well-being. The people of Taiwan need to wake up and realize that the U.S. will not save them, just as they have abandoned Ukraine and Gaza. This is the harsh reality of U.S. foreign policy. To further understand the distinction between rhetoric and reality in U.S. foreign policy, we can examine how concepts like democracy, freedom, and human rights are utilized. These terms are frequently invoked to justify military interventions, government overthrows, and the establishment of pro-U.S. regimes globally. For instance, the overthrow of the Ukrainian government and the installation of a puppet regime, subsequently armed, was rationalized as supporting democracy. However, the reality is that this action served U.S. geopolitical interests in the region, not the genuine democratic aspirations of the Ukrainian people. Similarly, the U.S. claim of wanting to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons is in essence a pretext for regime change in Iran, a nation unwilling to bend to U.S. will. These falsehoods are repeated so often that the public gradually accepts them as truth, without questioning the true motives behind them. The manipulation by the ruling elite extends beyond foreign policy. Domestically, they employ similar tactics to control and exploit the populace. Cuts to social welfare, health care, and tax increases for the poor, while simultaneously reducing taxes for corporations and billionaires, are prime examples. They craft seemingly beautiful bills like Build Back Better that in reality primarily benefit the super-rich. Changes that favor the working class are often temporary, whereas those benefiting the wealthy are permanent. This reveals a harsh truth. The government does not serve the interests of the people, but rather the interests of the ruling elite. They use deception to make the public believe they are working for the common good, while in fact they are enriching themselves and their associates. Another aspect of this manipulation is the use of immigrants. The ruling elite often blame immigrants for social and economic problems, such as depressing labor values or increasing unemployment rates. However, in reality, immigrants are often victims of government policies, forced to leave their homelands due to wars, conflicts, or poverty caused by U.S. foreign policies. They come to developed nations seeking a better life, but are then exploited to lower labor costs and create societal divisions. The ruling elite encourages animosity between native-born citizens and immigrants, preventing the public from blaming them for the actual problems. This allows them to continue their exploitative policies and enrich themselves without opposition. Ultimately, the use of nations like Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan as cannon fodder for the U.S. empire is a clear demonstration of the brutality and inhumanity of U.S. foreign policy. Ukraine was thrust into a war with Russia, Israel into conflict in Gaza, and Taiwan into a confrontation with China. All of these actions serve U.S. geopolitical interests, not the interests of the people in those nations. The U.S. has no concern for the lives of Ukrainians, Israelis, or Taiwanese. They merely view them as tools to achieve their objectives. Like the dodo bird, these nations are being pushed into dangerous situations without realizing it. They believe in the empty promises of the U.S., unaware that they are being exploited and will ultimately be abandoned. This is a painful lesson about the dangers of trusting a narcissistic and inhumane empire. In the context of globalization and the rise of new powers, U.S. foreign policy has become increasingly complex and unpredictable. The relative decline of U.S. power on the international stage has forced them to employ more sophisticated tactics to maintain their dominant position. This includes forming military alliances, imposing economic sanctions, and utilizing disinformation campaigns to shape public opinion. The ultimate goal remains the control of resources, markets, and strategic trade routes globally. However, these tactics are increasingly being recognized and resisted by other nations, leading to the formation of a multipolar world where power is no longer concentrated in a single nation. The rise of China and Russia, along with the development of other emerging economies, is challenging the U.S.-led world order. China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, is expanding its economic and political influence across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Russia, with its assertive foreign policy, is reasserting its role in regional and global affairs. These developments are forcing the U.S. to adjust its strategy from focusing on proxy wars to intensifying geopolitical competition. However, these efforts are often hampered by a lack of transparency, inconsistencies in policy, and a lack of trust from allies. One of the biggest challenges the U.S. faces is the erosion of trust from its own citizens. As the public increasingly realizes that they are being deceived about important issues, from foreign policy to domestic economic matters, support for the government will decline. This can lead to social instability, protests, and changes in political leadership. However, the ruling elite often seeks to suppress dissenting voices by using media to shape public opinion or by repressing social movements. They create an environment where truth is distorted and people are trapped in a cycle of misinformation. In this context, awakening and recognizing the truth are crucial. People need to seek information independently, question what they hear, and not blindly trust the words of politicians. Only then can they make informed decisions and protect their own and their community's interests. Sharing information, engaging in discussions, and creating an open space for dissenting opinions are essential to breaking the monopoly of information held by mainstream media and fostering a more open and transparent dialogue on important issues. However, this also poses the challenge of distinguishing between truth and falsehood and avoiding falling into conspiracy theories or misinformation. The reality of U.S. foreign policy is not merely an academic concern. It directly impacts the lives of millions worldwide. From wars in the Middle East to coups in Latin America and conflicts in Africa, the footprint of U.S. foreign policy is ever present. These actions are often justified by noble reasons such as fighting terrorism, protecting democracy, or maintaining regional stability. However, in reality, they frequently lead to instability, poverty, and violence. Millions have been displaced from their homes, becoming refugees, and thousands have lost their lives due to these policies. This raises a critical question about the moral responsibility of a superpower whose actions result in such severe consequences. In this context, the role of the media is paramount. Mainstream media often serves as a tool to propagate government policies, distorting the truth and concealing unfavorable information. They create a skewed perception of the world, making it difficult for the public to grasp the true nature of issues. However, with the advent of the internet and social media, information has become more accessible than ever. People can seek information from various sources, compare perspectives, and draw their own conclusions. This presents an opportunity to break the information monopoly of mainstream media and foster a more open and transparent dialogue on critical issues. Nevertheless, it also poses the challenge of distinguishing between truth and falsehood and avoiding entanglement in conspiracy theories or misinformation. Ultimately, recognizing the nature of power and how it is wielded is the first step toward creating change. When people understand that they possess the power to alter the status quo, they will no longer accept the lies and manipulation of the ruling elite. They will demand transparency, accountability, and justice from their leaders. This can lead to the formation of powerful social movements, peaceful protests, and policy changes. History has shown that when people unite and fight for their rights, they can bring about significant transformations. Therefore, awaken, seek the truth, and act to build a better world where truth and justice are upheld. This intricate dance between declared intentions and actual outcomes is not a new phenomenon in international relations. Throughout history, powerful nations have often cloaked their strategic ambitions in the guise of noble ideals. What distinguishes the current era, however, is the unprecedented speed and reach of information, which theoretically should make such deceptions harder to sustain. Yet paradoxically, the sheer volume of information coupled with sophisticated disinformation campaigns often makes it more challenging for the average citizen to discern truth from fabrication. The digital age, while offering tools for enlightenment, also provides fertile ground for manipulation, creating echo chambers and reinforcing existing biases. This dynamic makes the task of critical thinking and independent verification more vital than ever. Consider the economic dimensions of this foreign policy. Beyond geopolitical control, there is a clear economic imperative driving many of these actions. The pursuit of new markets, access to raw materials, and the protection of corporate interests often underpin interventions that are publicly framed as humanitarian or democratic endeavors. Trade agreements, often negotiated behind closed doors, can disproportionately benefit powerful corporations while disadvantaging local economies and labor. The imposition of sanctions, while presented as a means to pressure adversarial regimes, can also serve to weaken competitors and open up new opportunities for U.S. businesses. This economic lens reveals a more pragmatic and often less altruistic motivation behind the grand pronouncements of foreign policy. Furthermore, the concept of national security itself has been broadened to encompass a vast array of interests, blurring the lines between defense and offense. The idea of preemptive strikes, for instance, has been justified as a necessary measure to protect national interests, even when the threat is not immediate or directly imminent. This expansive interpretation of security allows for interventions in distant lands, often with little public debate or oversight. The military-industrial complex, a powerful lobbying force, benefits immensely from this perpetual state of readiness and intervention, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of conflict and expenditure. Understanding this intricate web of economic and security interests is crucial to deconstructing the rhetoric surrounding U.S. foreign policy. Finally, the psychological impact of this constant state of deception on the populace cannot be overstated. When citizens are repeatedly fed narratives that contradict observable realities, it can lead to a profound sense of cynicism and disengagement. This erosion of trust in institutions, including government and media, can have far-reaching consequences for democratic participation and social cohesion. The challenge then becomes not just about exposing the lies, but about rebuilding a foundation of trust and shared understanding. This requires a commitment to transparency, accountability, and a willingness to engage in difficult conversations about the true nature of power and its exercise on both the domestic and international stages. Only through such a concerted effort can a more informed and empowered citizenry emerge, capable of holding its leaders accountable and shaping a foreign policy that truly reflects its values and aspirations.